It's nice to see everybody. My name is Annalie DeBoard, and I'm the president of the Historical Society. And I see a lot of new faces, which is fun. And we appreciate you coming out today. I'm going to turn everything over to Carrie. I've had the best time watching her put all of this out and trying to figure out what it all does and what it's good for. So, Ms. Sparks?
All right. I've been excited about gathering up weeds this week. I'm the person you might see out along the road somewhere in the county or in town. With a shovel, with a big crazy hat on, and digging up plants along the road or in the field. And I was doing that just yesterday evening. I thought, I don't have any elderberry. So I'm driving along the road, I spot some, I'm pulling over and running over in the ditch and getting, I bet people thought, what is the lady's having trouble? No, she's just getting weeds. But I'm so glad all of you came today and appreciate some of you showing up, family and friends, just tickled to see you. Hello, Beth, come on in. Thank you. I'm Carrie Sparks. I've been here in Marion for 54 years. I'm not from Marion, but I got here as soon as I could. I came to work at the employment office back in 1969. Came to town, didn't know where I was going to stay, didn't know anybody in Marion. Jim Buchanan at the employment office said, I'll help you out. I'll take you up to Sissy's house to stay for a while. Margaret Buchanan up here on Strother Street. So I love Marion. Years ago then I got interested in edible medicinal plants. So first of all, I grew up in the country and I knew certain weeds. I knew they had a value, but I didn't ever use them for anything. But I went to classes at my friend Mary Alice Harden. She had a nature club for children and she had classes for adults. And I made notes and she loaned me books and I'd buy me a book like that and I would study and make notes and type them up. And so if I was at the wellness center on one of the machines, I'm reading about chickweed as I go along. So that's how I read and studied and got familiar with the plants. I do not have a degree in science. I don't have a science background. I'm just interested in the plants, finding out fun facts about them, and then sharing that with other people, hoping that you may get an interest in the plants that's in your yard too, besides spraying them and digging them out. Also, I belong to the Holston Rivers chapter of the Virginia Master Naturalist program. I did that in 2008, and when you go through that training, in order to become certified, you have to volunteer 40 hours a year in something in the natural world. You could do it for an agency, game commission, state parks, or you could just do programs on your own once you get enough experience and you feel okay with doing that. So I had to get 40 hours volunteer work, and I thought, what am I going to do? Because when you go through the Master Naturalist program, when you get through, are you a master? No. You don't know all about trees and birds and plants and rocks, and it's too much out there to know like that all at one time. So I tried to hone in on what is it I'm really interested in. What do I want to do programs about? And one of them was water bugs, and some of my assistants are here today. And then I was interested in edible medicinal plants. So I started reading and making a few products and getting used to that. And so that's what I've come to share with you here today. So this program is to encourage you to learn something about the wild plants, to learn to gather some and either add them to the food you're already fixing. I'm not saying just go out and eat wild plants, but add some of those to what you're going to fix. Maybe it's a meatloaf, maybe it's a casserole, maybe it's scrambled eggs. There's all kinds of ways you can incorporate these edible plants into what you do every day. Don't just eat dandelion leaves, but add it to something. So this is to encourage you to make even little medical treatments for something simple. A headache, a sore throat, a skin irritation, something you wouldn't normally go to the doctor for anyway, at least not right away. So to make something on your own and try it out, that would be an interesting thing to do. Nothing here, I'm certainly not an herbalist, and I don't try to treat anyone. And I'm certainly not saying don't go to the doctor, just use weeds. If you have a situation that calls for medical diagnosis and treatment, Please don't keep using weeds for that. Go to a doctor for that, of course. But these are for things for you just to use on your own when it's not something complicated. Getting involved with wild, edible medicinal plants does several things. It helps you tap into your adventurous spirit. It satisfies the drive to be more self-reliant. And it fulfills the desire to connect intimately with the earth and its bounty. It sets you on a path to be a student of the plant world, an investigator, an observer, a history detective, because you learn that some cultures of people thousands of years ago were already using these plants as food and medicine. So you learn about the Romans and the Greeks who were already using this. And some of these plants that are here today, in Europe, they're considered their delicacy foods. They eat them every day. The lamb's quarters, I'll find them here in just a minute, and I'll show you I'll tell you about them when we get to them. But they've been used for thousands of years. It's not like this is something new. In our country, most Americans can identify about 1,000 commercial logos. You know what, every company has their logo, and you know what it is. But those same people, us, can identify maybe 5 plants in the wild that grow in. I'm not talking about garden plants. Weeds. They can identify maybe 5 by name, but they know all the logos. So I recommend that you get started in your own yard, in your neighborhood, looking for weeds. You don't have to go off somewhere because weeds are everywhere unless you have your yard looking like a golf course. Boring. Okay. We consume plants in our meals every day. We either eat plants every day, even if you're somebody that doesn't ever have a vegetable, you eat plants every day, or you eat animals that ate plants. So when I do a program for young people on walks and I say, what did you have for breakfast this morning? What did you have, Melinda, for breakfast?
Eggs.
Eggs. Now, how in the world would that pertain to the plant world? That chicken eats corn, eats chickweed, different plants, and so that would figure into your eggs being affected by plants, even if it's not a plant. Okay, what about you, John? What did you have for breakfast this morning? Eggs. Something beside eggs. What else did you have?
Cereal.
What?
Cereal.
Okay, cereal. You either had something that was made with wheat, oats, rice. I'm not sure what else, what other kind of cereals there are. Or you might have had Cheerios. No, I'm just. So all of those goes back to a grain that grew in the ground as a plant, harvested the grain, made the cereal. So you can barely get through your day and eat anything at all, even if it's meat. Let's say you had a sausage biscuit. Well, that pig probably fed on grass, apples, food products that's made with plants for the hog to eat. So my point being, you're having plants every day in some form. So right now is a real good time to try to learn about the plants, to get books and go out in your yard and around the neighborhood and try to identify, because all the work's already been done for us. All we have to do now is learn to identify the plant and how to use it. So much scientific analysis has been done on every plant on this table, not by me, but by scientists, that they know now, does the plant actually have something within it that helps itch? Does it have something that would help cough? Is there something there that would help a sore throat? They have analyzed all this. They know what the vitamin content is of all the plants, what the mineral content is. So all we have to do is get books. I did bring a few books along. I'll probably get it. Can I walk away from my mic? Can everybody still hear me? So there's several books over here. One on dandelion medicine, it's whole book, so dandelion is the thing. Please stop cutting them out of your yard, because I bet when you do, you're going to the store and buying you some vitamins and something to lower your blood pressure and all that. Quit cutting out your dandelions and just start using them. So I see people cutting dandelions out of the yard, and I almost have to get tickled a little bit, because you're never going to get them out of your yard. But when we might say our grandmothers gathered stuff and made something when we felt bad. Or we might say our grandmothers gathered some greens and cooked a pot of greens. A lot of the remedies were still hearsay. They just did it because their mother did it. But now, like I said, all the analysis has been done. We really know now if it has an effect, if it has a good effect. A long time ago, people didn't really know what to use all the plants for, and their idea was this. God gave us all these plants, all these trees for us to use. He must have given us some kind of hint on how to use them. So doctrine of signatures refers to, they thought anything, what it looked like, the leaf color or the shape of the plant or the fruit that was on the plant, if it resembled some body part, then they thought that must be the part of the body that would be good for. And here's a good example, black walnuts. So they look at this black walnut and they say, well, this part is round, kind of like your head. And if you took the hull off, then you've got that hard shell walnut, kind of like your skull. And if you crack that open, you have those little compartments in nut meat that's kind of like your brain. So it was assumed that walnuts, nuts, would be good for your head, any kind of head problems, including mental problems. We think of that as being head. So that would be doctrine of signatures. Another one that went along with doctrine of signatures is the mullein. It's covered with a fuzzy fur and has little hair-like things all over it. So they thought, the lungs are kind of like that. They have all those little, you all have to fill in the words. I don't always know what that is. In your lungs, the little hair-like things. So they thought, this must be good for anything lung-related. Well, it so happens it really is. I don't know how that turned out. Maybe that was just magic that it turned out that that was the correct thing. So that was doctrine of signatures. So that's how they would try to determine. I'm thinking of one in particular, hepatica. A lot of times if people take a liver medicine, it might contain hepatica. But the hepatica plant has a mottled burgundy kind of leaf that sort of looks liverish. So that's how they determined how they would use plant. And of course, early settlers too, they did learn a lot from Native Americans. Now, when those settlers came over here, left their country and came over, they didn't really know what to expect. They didn't know if their plants would be here, so they brought some with them. 3 in particular that they brought with them that's well documented. They probably brought lots of plant cuttings or seeds, but 3 in particular that's well documented is the chickweed, plantain, and dandelion. So if you don't like dandelion growing in your yard, you can thank your ancestors because they brought it along with them. They wanted to be sure they had the food, medicine, and beverages from these products when they got here to grow. And so plantain became spreading so easily that Native Americans started calling it white man's foot. Everywhere the white man would come and settle for a little while, live there for a little while, and they'd move on. Plantain growing everywhere. So they started calling it white man's foot. And that was used as a food and a medicine. We'll get into those in just a little bit. What I'd like to do is tell you about each one of the plants. And if you have some questions, maybe we'll do that at the end. That way, if some people have to leave, if they're on a time limit, anybody that wants to stay and talk about it, we will. I'd like to tell you how you could use some of these plants and how you could preserve them to use when wintertime comes and the plants aren't there anymore. So if we were going to use some of the plants as food, I might have to come around there just a little bit. I'm having trouble reading upside down. What are some of the ways that we could use the plants as food? A lot of it can be eaten raw. Some of it can be cooked as greens, dandelions, lamb's quarters, those things you would cook up as greens. I like to saute wild plants, whether it be dandelion root, dandelion leaf. Just start that in a little skillet to saute and then scramble an egg in it or something. You know, that's how I use them the most. Put them in soup, add them to quiche, eggs, meatloaf, or casseroles. That's a good way to use the wild meats, wild plants. Like I said, I don't think anybody ought to just go out and eat them a handful of chickweed, but find out how to incorporate that into your food. Okay, what about wild plants as medicine? Different kind of ways we can incorporate them in to use them as medicine. The easiest way is to make a tea. Of course, that's just like making a tea bag, same thing. Now, when you're going to make tea to use as medicine from some plants, you want it to be a little stronger than just your cup of Lipton. So you might make a cup of tea, strain it out, add some more plant material in, make it a little stronger if you're trying to treat an ailment. Some of the teas wouldn't taste very good. If you were going to make a yarrow tea, unless you like the taste of chrysanthemums, that's not going to be real good. So I suggest that people just use a regular tea bag. Whatever your favorite tea is, make that and include this plant in the tea that you would be making and drinking anyway. A decoction is a tea, but it's made out of tougher material, bigger stems, roots, that you couldn't just put it in a cup of water for 10 minutes. You would have to simmer that about half an hour, either to drink or to use on your body as a medicine. That would be a decoction. A compress. A compress is when we would make a strong tea with something that would be medicinal, and like maybe we'd make a compress out of yarrow. We would kind of cook it like we were going to make a tea, get the liquid real strong, take a wash rag, soak it in that, and put it on the place you want to treat. Maybe it's a skint place, a sore, a boil, or something like that. And you would take that tea, have it warm, put your rag, put that on it, and do it often. You'd have to like treat yourself for several days with something like that. Okay, then we have poultice. How I remember which one is poultice and which one is compress. Poultice starts with P, and so does plant. Poultice is you're going to put the actual plant material onto the place you're trying to treat. And what I do to make a poultice is I'll take, maybe I would take chickweed, because I'm going to put it on a sore place that's getting inflamed, maybe from a briar scratch. So I might take chickweed, put it in a little skillet, add a little water. I'm wanting to just cook that down enough to make it kind of soft. I'm wanting to soften that material up a little bit. Then put like a little cornstarch in it to kind of goo that thing up, and you pick that whole piece up, put it on warm, apply it to the place that needs to be treated. That would be a poultice. Then you could make it into a salve. Making the plant, I do have salve. I have salve for everybody right here in this bag. So before you leave today, pick you up one of these. We call it my Wonder Working Miracle Salve. It's good for treating itchy insect bites, a rash, a place that's red, getting kind of maybe infected from a little scratch or sore place. You can use this anywhere on your body. It is safe to use for children. I don't know about total newborns. I don't know, but there's nothing in it that would be unsafe for them, but I just wouldn't recommend it. But a child 2 years old could certainly use this on their mosquito bites and skint places. So your alls are in little bags right there. Be sure and get that. So what else can we do? We can make a syrup. I don't have a syrup made, but one of the things I would make a syrup with would be elderberry. On making that would also be a way to preserve that plant for the winter time to have it to use. So the elderberry, to make a syrup, I usually use like 1 part plant, 3 parts water. I would use a cup of elderberries, 3 cups of water, cook that down, strain it out, cook it down a little more, add some honey. Anytime you're making a tea or a syrup out of wild plants to use for medicine, you don't want to use white sugar. You would use honey or maple syrup or molasses. I don't think it would be very good, but if that's what you had, you would sweeten it with anything besides white sugar. So that's how we could use plants as medicine, use plants as food. So how do we preserve those? Well, sometimes I just dry things. So let me show you something that is dry. One of my favorites, slippery elm bark. I just gathered some this morning. So I don't want to cut on somebody's tree and get the bark out of it, so I just use, limbs like this. So for slippery elm or something like witch hazel, what I'm going to do is just peel the bark off and take that inner bark out. I don't want the brown bark on the outside. I just want that little inner bark. And then I would just lay that up on the shelf or the refrigerator a week or so, make sure that's good and dry. I want to pass this around. I want y'all to get a smell of what slippery elm bark is. So divine. It smells like maple syrup, maple candy, brown sugar. But when I take it off, when I cut it like this fresh, There's no smell, just a green plant. But as it cures and ages out a little bit, Dr. Walker has joined us. Okay, good. So, oh, he may contradict all of my things about wild plants. Oh, gosh, I'll have to be careful. So everybody, just try a little smell of that. And if you don't want to smell where everybody else is smell, just hold it out from you a little bit. Pull some out with your hand. And how I would use that, slippery elm is one of my favorites. Slippery elm, it's going to look like this. And that leaf is so rough, it feels like sandpaper. So where's the slippery idea come from? Okay, if that little bark that I peel off of there and put the inner bark in, now for instance, if this was in a cup of tea, I just put it in water to show you. It is very mucilaginous. I put this in last night. It is very slick, it's very slimy. So that's going to come out into your tea, but you're not going to feel that. You're not going to feel that effect when you drink it. It's just going to be part of your tea. I just put some of that dry slippery elm in whatever tea I'm drinking. Now what slippery elm will do is going to go all the way through your body and out and soothe, even if you have colon problems, IBS, those kind of things. This is going to help and soothe with all these things all the way in your throat, all the way through your system. And that is slippery elm. Witch hazel can be done the same way. You just pull them off, take the inner bark out, put it in. Witch hazel would be an alcohol, but this one's just something to put in tea. And that one's slippery elm. You'll see how delightful it is. Something I was going to mention about, if you wanted to learn about these plants, I don't recommend going and buying a bunch of books. There's a little bit in every book that you can use, but you can't use what's in that whole book. And you can pretty soon, like me, have a whole shelf full of books. And now, I'm finally modern enough to say we could just look that up online. And YouTube has some of the best information. Just say you've got mullein growing in your yard. You think, what could I do with the mullein? Just go to YouTube, say, how can I use mullein? And you'll come up with all kind of videos of how you can make a mullein cough syrup, mullein earache medicine, those kind of things. So I recommend doing it online. Sure, get you a book, but don't put a whole lot in books yet until you're sure you're going to go the way of weeds. I would also suggest using an app. I use iNaturalist. There's a lot of different apps out there. Most of them are free, and you can identify about anything with them. iNaturalist will do things like birds, plants, trees, wildflowers, bugs. So if you have that app and you think, this is growing in my yard, I wonder what that is. If you take a picture of that to iNaturalist, somebody's going to tell you within like just a few, maybe less than a minute, that you've got some St. John's wort. Tanya and I at the park, I didn't bring any horsetail with me today, but there's a plant called horsetail. It grows in big masses, and it grows out along Brunswick Lane. You know the plant that's up along the railroad track next to the end, when you get up there next to Johnson Road, they've killed it all out. They probably thought it was no good too. But there's still plenty down the road, and so horsetail is one of those things that I didn't bring any of it. What I tried to do to bring today was just very common things. About all of this grows in my yard, and I did have to go get a few things off the Riverwalk around town. But so think about using an app. Think about looking it up on YouTube. So let's just talk about the mullein for a minute. Mullein is a 2-year plant. When you're going to make a tea with it, you want that first year plant. First year is basil leaves, not the stalk it. This would be in the middle, coming up in the middle. Second year, the stalk grows up and makes the blooms and the seeds for the next plants. So this plant will live 2 years, and that's the end of it. If you have another plant come up in that same place, it'd be from a seed, not from the same plant. Okay, so Native Americans smoked this for anything bronchial related, a cough, congestion, laryngitis. Now I would say COPD. There again, would I treat myself totally with mullein? No, but it would be a good addition to just drink some of that tea once in a while. It certainly wouldn't hurt anything. I just take the inside out of the plant just because the leaves are usually laying on the ground. So I just take the middle out, twist that out, cut it up with scissors because I want the hot water to affect the inside of that leaf as much as I can to bring the quality that's within the plant out into the water. So you can drink it as a tea. You can keep cooking it down, add honey, make a syrup, a good cough syrup with it. Okay, so as these blooms come up in the second year, the stalk comes up with the blooms, it don't bloom all at one time. Plants do that as a way to be sure they get pollinated. If this bloomed all at one time and it's a cloudy day, kind of cool, pollinators are not out, and then the bloom's gone, okay, this plant missed its chance of going on into the future. But so when this is growing in my yard, I just go out every day, pick the yellow blooms off. Tomorrow it'll be much more, if you keep picking them, they'll keep growing. If you don't pick them, that's going to stop. That'll be the end of it. So what I do with these yellow blooms then is put them in a good quality oil, something like a jojoba or almond oil, something like that, and let it soak for like weeks and then strain it out. This is good for like an earache, and I have used it. I don't know, those of you all more my age in here whose mom used to treat your earache with sweet oil, I'm not really sure what is in sweet oil. Maybe it's just the oil, I don't know. Maybe it's almond oil, don't know what it is. But these flowers in here, earache remedy. But if you took these same blooms and put them in alcohol in the form of a tincture, then that's good for migraine headaches. Or if you didn't even have the bloom in it and you drank enough of the tincture, maybe you wouldn't notice your headache. I'm not sure exactly how that one works. But the reason you would use alcohol when you're making a tincture, you could make it with other things, but it's not as effective and it will not last very long, is I use vodka mainly just because Everclear's about twice the price. And that's the only reason I use vodka to make a tincture. The alcohol preserves the essence that's within the plant material. The plant material is going to come out in that alcohol. It's going to set it in a dark place in the cabinets. You're going to shake that, every day or so, let it sit for a few weeks or a month, then strain it out. The essence of that plant is going to stay in that alcohol, and it will last for years. I mean, I've got things that I made years ago. They're still very usable, and they will last as long as you keep them sealed up and keep them in a place that's, not sitting out in the sunlight or that would affect the strength of it or something like that. So mullein, let me see here if there was something, It stimulates coughing up, so if you have congestion, it helps you it works as an expectorant. I just got these two coming out of the flower patch as I came out of the house just to say they're everywhere. Edible medicinal plants are everywhere. This one happens to be peppergrass. It's got a sharp mustard taste. Those little seeds on there could just be thrown on a salad. That's how you wouldn't cook that. You would just throw those on a salad. That is peppergrass. It's in the mustard family. Then here's one that grows all over the place, hard as anything to pull up, and this is called mallow. Common mallow. And once it has that bloom, there's the bloom, and once it makes the little fruiting body on it, it looks like a little pinwheel of cheese. And they're called cheeses. Some people call them cheeses. You can just pop those off and eat them like a little snack. So if you find some of those, eat a few. I always recommend have you a bottle of water. Sometimes I've been out doing programs for people outside, just saying, oh, let me show you, I can eat it. Get strangled on whatever I've got in my mouth. So make sure you've got a bottle of water when you're going to be out somewhere eating weeds. Okay, spice bush. Diane says she's got some growing in her yard. Spice bush a lot of times will grow along wet areas. It's all along our river walk in town. And spice bush gets these berries, these fruits on it, and their turn is starting to turn red. They'll get very bright red by fall of the year. This is y'all are welcome to come up later and kind of check these out like that, get a good smell of that. It's a citrusy, spicy taste. It's also called fever bush, and I said this is spice bush. I know I've got a lot of these all sitting around with everything else. Let's highlight it here just a minute. Also called fever bush. If you drank a hot tea made with this, it would break a fever. I had a little bag. I've got some spice bush tea back here. On this table back here, I have spice bush tea, sumac tea. No, don't say poison. I'll tell you about that. I've got a quiche made with wild plants. I've got a hickory nut pie and a nettle pesto. I'd like for you to try. I think I forgot to say a touch of dandelion wine, so try that out. I'm not sure I'm supposed to say that, but try a little bit of it. Don't be like Dan Kegley. Dan Kegley tried some one time. I heard him tell Sarah. He said, I came up here this morning without eating, and he said, I just had a little bit of that. He said, I'm already feeling it, so be careful today. You might be having to drive home. So on this spice bush, how I make a tea with this, I use the twigs, and I just wanted to show you that that's about how much I would use to make a quart of tea, just a little handful. Now, you don't want to use that little green twig. You want to go back a little farther on the plant, or to older limbs, it's got more of a woody look. That green part is going to be kind of bitter if you made a tea with that. So about that much ice bush tea. Okay, let's go to purslane. Purslane typically grows on the ground so that it looks like water lines. It looks like little water pipes running everywhere on the ground. The leaf looks kind of like a jade plant, not thick as a jade, but not a flat leaf like most plants are. What I find so interesting about this plant, purslane, it has more omega-3 fatty acid than any plant ever analyzed. We think we have to get that from fish oil. Those of us who are trying to treat our own cholesterol levels, we think we have to have fish oil to have omega-3. But this is very high in omega-3s. You can eat it raw. You can eat they're a little bit sour. You can throw those on a salad, put them in soup, stir fry, casserole, any of the regular things that we could do with the food, added to the foods we're already eating.
What's the name of that again?
Purslane.
Oh, okay. It gets real thick, too.
Yeah, it'll be a big mat of it sometimes on the ground, and it just looks like little water lines running everywhere. I wanted to refer to this because I forget some of the details. Each plant's got so many good things. This is being used in tests for Alzheimer's. I mean, they're doing research with it. This is one of the plants that they're working with right now. And you all are welcome to come up and look about them. You know, after we get a little farther along here, you all can come and take a little closer look. Okay, this is common chickweed. There's different kinds of chickweed. There's mouse-eared chickweed, star chickweed, probably more than I know of. But this one is common chickweed. It is a winter annual. It's at its best in the wintertime. Along our river walk in town, there are lush carpets of it, bigger than this table. And I don't go in and pick something this long. When I'm going to pick it, I'm just going to use scissors, go along like I'm giving it a haircut, and take the top couple of leaves off, because the rest of that gets a little stringy. And in the summertime, the plant does get stringy. It's really not that great in the summertime, but I do put it in the salve I make. If you can very gently, that one didn't work, to show you. Well, there's like a little string in it. Like if you pull the little stem apart, it's got like a little string in there. So that does make it strong. So if I'm going to use this to eat, like raw in a salad, it's not bitter, it's not sour. So if you had a box of lettuce from the store or a bag of that lettuce, then you would just cut this and add to it. The lettuce is good for you in a way, yes, but it really doesn't have a lot of nutrition. Most of the things that we get like that have been raised in places anymore to where the ground is kind of worn out. So eating lettuce or salads is, you know, it's healthy in a way, but it doesn't really have a whole lot of nutrition. But something like this added to it does. Chickweed. It's also now as medicine. I do put it in the salve that I make because it does help with itching. It's kind of like those plants, like you get a mosquito bite, and you could get this and kind of crush it up and get the wetness and put it on like this. It would relieve the itch. Might be temporarily, but it would relieve it some. Common chickweed goes in my salve. I say use it as a poultice or in the salve. Okay, what's next down here? I had a time getting these little rascals. My elderberries, I have elderberries in the yard, but the birds take to them before they can ever begin to get ripe. My little berry heads are already all cleaned off, and they were still green. So there's two elderberries. You don't want to use red elderberry. Red elderberry grows a lot over around Grayson County, around Grindstone Campground. People say, well, how would I not get those mixed up? Okay, red elderberry grows, the bloom and the berries kind of grow in a little upright clump. Black elderberry is flat. It's got a flat white bloom and a flat berry head on it. Now, they might get heavy and, you know, hang down like this, but it's still relatively flat. Never eat the raw berries. I've heard people, they just say they just pick them and eat them. Not really a good idea. Here's why. It's not that they're toxic in a way of poison you, but everything elderberry has a diuretic effect, a laxative effect, including elderberry wine, or any product you make with elderberry. And that's why it's so good to use when you have a cold or a flu or something like that, because it helps with elimination. A lot of things that are wrong in your body is because of not complete elimination. Sometimes the elderberry might help with something like that. So you can make it into a syrup. Not like this. You'd have to have the berries would all be dark black. You know, they'd be ripe black. These are nowhere near ready to use. People used to make elderberry pies, elderberry jelly. I don't do anything like that. I did try my hand at elderberry wine one time. I didn't think it was worth all the effort to do that again, so I never did go. I asked Cameron Wolf one time, the hedge, that hemlock hedge that goes between his place and the Baptist church, it used to just grow full of elderberries. I mean, they'd be hanging everywhere. So I stopped and asked him, Cameron, I don't know if those are your bushes or the Baptist church's bushes, but I'd rather ask you if I could get some of them to make wine with. So rather than go to the other side of the yard, I didn't know how they'd feel about that. So, okay, elderberry. Oh, here's something else they say you can do with elderberries. Take off the leaves and just take them off by the whole strip of it and lay them under your cucumber plants or your melon plants. It keeps insects away. That's just a little extra that it does in its hard work. Here's one that maybe you haven't used before. Haven't eaten too many of stinging nettles. Don't come up here and get a hold of this when I bend over and take a smell of it. Stinging nettle doesn't smell very good anyway. Let me see. Can't smell it now, but you can smell it when you're out in the woods and come across it. So this one happens to be stinging nettles. You think, surely you wouldn't eat stinging nettles, would you? It is the most nutrient-rich plant on the planet. So we should be using it. And the way I use it, on the table back here, I have made some nettle pesto. There's some crackers there. I hope you'll try it. Now, what I would say about wild foods, try a little. If you like it, don't have a bunch of seconds, because if your body's not used to wild foods, it could give you that effect of eating too much elderberries. Tanya had that effect one time, I think. She had a little too much wine, a little too everything, and then she paid for that after she went home. So the thing about nettles, you would use it as a cooked green. So I wear gloves, take my scissors, use a paper bag. And there again, I'm only going to take that little top part off. I don't want that stem. I just want the top leaves off of it. And take that home. I've already got my water boiling before I go to the river to gather them. Put it through the first water one time, 2 minutes, let it boil 2 minutes. Take it out, put it in the next water, 2 minutes. Put it in the third water. And this time I'm going to cook it until I can pull some over against the side of the kettle with a fork. And when I can cut that easily with my fork, then they're done, they're cooked. And ever how you might eat cooked greens, if you want to have vinegar and salt or bacon or something like that on it, or don't throw the water out. The water you've cooked that in is very beneficial. You can use it on your house plants. You can put it on something. You couldn't water your whole garden with it, but there might be something special that you would want to put that on to take care of. But you could use the broth that you've cooked that in as a soup base, then just freeze it. Next time you get ready to make a pot of soup, pull out your nettle broth. It doesn't really have a taste to it, but it has lots of nutrition in that broth that's got cooked out into the water. And that would go in your any kind of soup, vegetable beef, anything like that.
That's the third broth, right, that you're talking about?
Right, yeah. Or I might keep both broths if I was just going to use it on house plants or something like that, yeah.
So you don't want to eat the first two, right?
Right. Let's see. It is, it's good for arthritis, hay fever, it's anti-inflammatory, it helps as a detox. And here's something interesting that you can do with this that has nothing to do with medicine or food. Anybody who has a rain barrel is going to have a good place for mosquitoes to live and thrive and hatch out of. So I have read that if you will just pull the whole plant, 2 or 3 plants of nettle, put it down in the barrel, that'll take care of your mosquito problem with the rain barrel. So be worth a try for sure.
What'd you say the name of that was?
Stinging nettle. Now, if you get yourself in some stinging nettle, be sure you find yourself some jewelweed. Can everybody hear all right? I'm kind of loud. I don't know if this works without that. I'm my own loudspeaker, I guess. Jewelweed is that plant that we go to when we have an itchy thing. When we have got in poison ivy or stinging nettle, then we're just going to find a jewelweed. Now there's an orange blooming one and there's a yellow blooming one. They both have the same effect. And you're just going to use your thumbnails and just split that stalk open. There's a lot of good juiciness in it. It's in the impatient family. So you know how impatiens looks like the stalk looks a little translucent sometimes? You just rub that wetness on whether it be a mosquito bite, poison ivy, stinging nettle.
What's that called again, jewelry?
Jewelweed.
Jewelweed.
For this reason, if I had something I could stick to some of the water right now, water beads will beat up on it and it reflects the light and it looks like jewels on the leaf of the plant. Some people call it touch me not because none of these are ready, but those little seeds, when they get nice and fat, you kind of pop the bottom of it and it'll fly apart. Now, you probably never noticed what was in that thing when it flew apart, but if you can get a nice big one sometime that's ripe, hold it in your hand while you let it pop so you can take a look at it when it pops out. There'll be 4 little, I don't know quite what to call them, little fruiting bodies, and they will be as blue as china when it's ripe, when it gets fully ripe. And they're edible. You could eat them, and it kind of tastes like nuts, like hickory nuts. That's what I think they taste like. So jewelweed will treat the itch of poison ivy, stinging nettle. Some people make a salve with that. Okay, let's do plantain. When I want to do a program with plants, I want my weeds to look good, and I could not find any good-looking plantain. I've gone everywhere trying to dig plantain out of people's yards and along the road. I even forgot where I dug this, down on the Riverwalk, I think. Plantain is one of the plants that the settlers or colonists brought with them. Either maybe they just brought the seeds. This is the seed stalk that goes with this particular plantain. This is called wide leaf plantain. There's also the narrow leaf, but I don't use it because it's got little hairs all over it, and so I don't want to be eating it or using it for medicine. But this is edible, and if I was going to eat plantain, I'm not going to eat those big outer leaves that get mowed and eaten on by insects. I'm going to go to the center of the plant and just pick the little youngest, brightest green leaves. Saute some of these, a little olive oil. Now, I don't use soy sauce, but if you use soy sauce, something like that on it, it's very, very good. And it's nutritious. It's got a lot of vitamins in it. But I also put this in my salve because it does help stuff to heal. Plantain is also good at drawing stuff out. Let's say you got a little piece of glass in your thumb or a briar or anything. Make a poultice with this. Making a poultice, as we said on our sign, that's with plants softened, cooked a little bit, mush them up, put them on that place you need something drawn out, wrap it up so it doesn't get away from that place, and it will help to draw that out of your skin. That's something plantain is good for. It says it's a real good tea for IBS. Okay. And it's one of those you can like tear up and put on a bite to take care of the itch. Plantain. Let's do red clover. We could do probably a whole program on red clover. There's so many things about it. We don't really ever give it any thought, but that's all right. Just leave it down there. It won't matter. Just leave it. Thank you, Louise. Like I said, most of this grows in my yard. My yard must be a mess, right? Okay, probably is. Maybe I better get that paper. I want to be sure I don't forget to tell you that it is well documented that at least 33 different cultures throughout the world have used red clover in breast cancer treatment. So if this was an outward tumor, it would be a real strong tea, real strong, just keep adding more and more blooms until you have it real strong, and use that on a cloth and apply it to wherever you know the tumor would be. Also, preparing this and drinking it internally is supposed to be helpful too. Let's see some of the things that I might not think to tell you. The National Cancer Institute has verified that red clover contains at least 4 anti-tumor compounds. Back in the early part of the 1900s, maybe even up 30s and 40s, There was a doctor, Dr. Hoxsey. Look up something on this. I might not spell his name right. It's either Hoxxey or Hoxsey, Hoxsey. I'm not sure how to spell his name. He had a very effective alternative cancer treatment going on. He had a lot of patients, came to him from all over the country. And a lot of his treatment included some form of red clover. Well, you can imagine that didn't get approved by whoever has to approve all that, and he ended up having to go to Mexico. People still went to Mexico to get his treatments, but he couldn't do that in our country. Well, there's not much money in red clover, is there? So here is a red clover tincture. Now, Dr. Walker, I want you to have some of these tinctures and treat your patients, okay? I believe he will. If not at work, maybe at home. Okay, dandelion. We couldn't have a plant program without dandelion. This is not the prettiest dandelion you ever did see. Dandelion is one of those plants between dandelion, lamb's quarter, and nettle, the most nutrient plants that we have on the earth. So this is not a pretty dandelion, and I don't see anything on it that I would eat. There again, if I was going to use a dandelion for food, I'm going to go to the center of the plant, get the youngest, tender, lightest green leaves. Usually I'm going to get the leaves that are growing by themselves in the yard in the shade, and that's what I've gathered to put in our food today. I'll tell you about it, what's in it in a minute. But dandelion is used to treat all kind of situations. Like this book here has all kind of recipes of things that could be made and recommends ways to use dandelion. It's supposed to help lower cholesterol, lower blood pressure, work against diabetes, work against cancer cells dividing. The root is the strongest. The dandelion root has the strongest medicine in it for trying to do something like treat cancer. There again, see a doctor, but something like this certainly wouldn't hurt you to try that if you're a person that likes to try alternative medicines. Here's something made with dandelion. This has been roasted. This is the root that has been, I just cut it up and roasted it in a little cast iron skillet. So it would make like a bitter drink, kind of like coffee. You know, the first time you ever drink coffee, you think, oh, really, people drink this? Because it's bitter, you know, it has a strength to it. So dandelion colonists and people worldwide would use this, that if they didn't have coffee and they came to this country and they didn't have coffee, and they would have a coffee-like drink from things like dandelion root. Dandelion root roasted. And you can make tea with this. You don't have to make like a coffee drink. You can make a cup of tea. Be a good way to preserve it and use it during the winter when you need it to have dandelion medicine. All right, let's do staghorn sumac. And no, not poisonous. Poison sumac does not grow around here unless somebody just decided they'd collect the plant and bring it home with them. Poison sumac makes berries, kind of like poison ivy berries. If you've seen poison going up a tree and to the point it's got the berries on it and they're green and they get kind of whitish, greenish, whitish, that's poison sumac. Hard to mix up with this. So this is staghorn sumac. The three that's usable would be staghorn sumac, smooth sumac, and winged sumac. They all have a lemony, tart taste. That's what makes the medicine in it. I just got this one yesterday to show this one is not ready. You want it to be really, really dark burgundy when you dry it, when you collect it. And then I just put them up on a shelf, let them dry up. This one is from last year. You want to gather this in the late summer, early fall. After that, up into winter, the ice and the rains and different things will pull the strength out, and the gallic acid and stuff will wash out of it. So I'll just let those dry, then I've got them to use whenever I want them then. And if I have a lot, I will go ahead and disassemble that spike of, I don't know what you call these. They're not berries. It's not fruit. I'm not sure what the word would be for this. So I will take those off. And if I'm going to make a quart of the tea that I've got back here, I'm probably going to use half a jar. I'm going to use a pint of sumac fruit to over a quart of water. And that's the only tea that I know of that we're going to make in cold water. Everything else, you got to have hot water to make the tea. This one, the hot water would wash out the benefit of it. It might dissipate into the air. So this one goes in cold water. I just get a bowl big enough that I can kind of get my hands in, put it in half a jar. Cold water, it might have sit there big part of the day or overnight till you get enough that you think it's red enough. Taste it. Do you think it's sour enough? Here's the one I've made for us to drink today. So there's cups back here. Have you a little bit of it. See what you think. It's a little sour. That's how it treats your UTI. When we think we're getting a UTI, what's the first things we want to get a hold of and drink and treat ourselves with? Cranberry juice, lemon juice, vinegar water. They're all sour. They all contain certain acid that is sour, and that's what it is that works on your ailment, is the sumac. Let me see.
Cooked with it?
No, but I know a lot of cultures do. Have you used it in food?
I saw it on one of the cook shows. When a man was over in West Virginia.
Okay. Now,
Andrew Zimmerman or something.
okay, so in certain countries, this is
She did trout, fried trout.
trout.
Seasoned it with that.
Okay.
Said it was the best fish she had ever eaten.
Really? Well, certain countries do use this. India and other countries use it, and I can't think of what the word is. It's not filet, that's sassafras. It's something that they make with this that's like a real delicacy. I don't know what that, I forgot what that is. I don't know that much about that, using it that way. But we call it pink lemonade. And here's what's interesting about it to me. The plant and what it does, that's all well and good. I like to have some kind of little information about that plant that really stands out, and here it is. Of 100 different medical plants that was analyzed by scientists in research to see which one had the most antibiotic activity in it, sumac. So not just to take inwardly, but if you've got an injury on the outside, on your leg or arm, somewhere on your body, this would be a good wash. You know, we say, oh, get some hydrogen peroxide and wash it off. Okay, that's all well and good too. But this does have a little more to it than hydrogen peroxide. And this would be very antibiotic to wash and clean an area of an injury. And let's see what else I've got on here. It does have gallic acid. That's one of this species was the most active for antibiotic content. And we have a drink back there with the sumac and with the spice bush. We already covered the walnuts when we were talking about doctrine of signatures, so lamb's quarter. My lamb's quarter right now is about whatever this is, 5 or 6 feet high. It is getting older and tough, so I tried to find the little teeny plant. Do have lamb's quarter in our quiche today. Lamb's quarter, dandelion, nettles, 3 powerhouses of vitamins and nutrition. I don't think you use it medically anyway, other than let your food be your medicine and your medicine be your food, but it's not really something you would make up something to treat an ailment on your body with. But this is very nutritious, and it does have a little, I'm not sure what you call it, on the back of the leaf, it's like a little grittiness, kind of like is that the word silica that you put on something that would be a little gritty? But what I did, and when you're going to use it, if you wanted to use it in a salad and you didn't want that gritty on there, I just had me a pot of hot water, and I just took a bunch of little limbs of it, like I had them, and when I got the hot water hot enough to it was really hot, I just kind of soused them up and down in that a couple times. It didn't cook them, it didn't hurt them. And I pulled it out, and then the little grittiness is gone off the back of it. I'm not sure what that's called, but it's just a characteristic of that plant. Cooked greens, raw salad. If you have a guinea pig, they like it. Most of the things on the table that are edible by animals like that, I had guinea pigs and I always said we ate the same thing. I ate whatever the guinea pigs ate, or they ate what I ate. When we were talking about the black walnut, I made a tincture with the black walnut hull. See, I mean, it's really black. So I don't think I already told you that. Whack that off, put it in a little jar with some vodka, leave it a month or so, it'll get very black, it'll last for years. I don't even know when I first made this, a long time ago. looks pretty bad. Then you just use it with a cotton ball. Of course, it will stain, but it's good for any fungal infection, athlete foot, ringworm. I might have already covered that. Excuse me if I repeat myself.
And that was the black one?
Black walnut. Just take that green hull. Actually, if you say you had I don't think people has ringworm as much as they used to. I mean, I don't really notice kids or anybody having it like they did, like when I was a little girl growing up. But it does fight any kind of a fungal infection. And I've also read that it's good to use on shingles. Like if you got the shingles on your body, that to put this on, it kind of helps with the drying up process of that. No, I would just use this externally.
Okay.
Now, an herbalist, like your niece, might know how we could use that internally, but I wouldn't recommend it, and I'm not an herbalist, so. Okay, yarrow. Yarrow, you don't want to use it when it's dry and looking real ugly. So when it first comes up, it's without the blooms. Just plant like this. It's sort of lacy looking, fern-like. The name for it is Achille millefolium. It dates back to the Battle of Troy, is one of the first places we hear about it being used to treat wounds during that war they were having. So you want to either use the fresh leafy part like this, or the blooms, or both, but not when the plant starts drying up on the stalk where these parts are drying looking. You could still use the bloom, but you want fresh greenery and bloom. Excuse me. People used to call this nosebleed. Sometimes I try to play doctor. I'm not a real doctor, but I play one sometimes when I'm picking up people from the Appalachian Trail. So I had a guy had a nosebleed. He felt like he ought to go to the emergency room. So I sent him a bunch of this. Well, he probably thought crazy plant lady for sure. So just wad that up, get a little wad of it, kind of put it inside your nostril and hold that. Don't sniff. you might swallow it. But just hold that. That would help with the nosebleed. Bleeding on the outside, maybe you scratch, you got a cut and you can't get it stopped. This would help, and you would apply it. You would crush it up, maybe even wet it, and apply it to the cut and wrap that some way. This will stop bleeding. Let me see what I've got here. Okay, here's what I like about this. If you know anybody who's taking cancer treatments and radiation treatment, that kind of thing, and they get places in their mouth in particular, this is supposed to be excellent for that. You would make a tea with it, and then you would drink. You could drink it. It's not going to taste real good, but you could swallow it. That's no problem. And you could swish and wash your mouth out with this, all throughout the day. And it grows everywhere. I mean, it's certainly not hard to find. And I'll tell you about some of these things. If you wanted to use them, you think, I'll never go out and gather that. I don't know how to find it. I may not get the right thing. Almost everything that's here is available at health food stores, either in a capsule or in some other form that you could use it without having to pick your own plants. Yarrow, let's see. I thought this was interesting, that one thing it does, it helps to regulate high blood pressure. And this, which is managed largely by the kidneys, I didn't realize that. How far off track is that? So your kidneys kind of have effect on your blood pressure. This could help with that, and that's yarrow. But I think being used as cancer chemotherapy treatment, and also another cancer medication, I believe it might be called tamoxifen. And I think it a lot of times will cause hot flashes. This is good. The yarrow is good for that. Have I got all the plants out? I have some books up here. You're welcome to look at them. I have some pages here with information on these plants. Not every one that we have. My computer got messed up in my printer. We couldn't get it connected. I wanted to print you all off pages of all the plants. Most of the plants we talked about are on here, front and back. Now, if you're with a group, please share one among you. I think there's only 10 copies here. It's front and back. I put it in this little thing so you could keep it safe, but you're welcome to take this if you'd like to have one. Please share it, and don't, like everybody in a group of 4, take one, so that way we'll have enough if anybody wants one. Get you one of these salves. Let's just pass them around. Let's just pass it. Like I said, use this salve anywhere on your body. I put it in packs like this because I give it to Appalachia trail hikers. They don't want to carry a bottle. They don't want to be bothered with a bottle in their pocket, a bottle in their pack, but they can keep up with that little pack, and it's not much weight, and it's flat to their body. So you all use that up, and I'm going to go back here and uncover the food, and I'll tell you what we have. We have a quiche. It's sort of like a quiche. I'm not a quiche maker, but boys can sisters make quiche, let me tell you. So what we have here is like a quiche. I'll tell you what's in it in case it's something that you can't eat at home, but I did have some smoked brats. So I put some smoked brats in it. It does have some cheese in it, and it has the plants in it. It has onions in it. So just to let you know what's there in case you can't eat it. Okay, this one over here is hickory nut pie. What's in hickory nut pie? Pastry and hickory nuts. Cairo syrup and butter. So if, you know, just let you know what's in it in case that would be a problem for you. Okay, here is our nettle pesto. Have some on some crackers. I've got crackers right here. Let me spread the oil of it around here just a little bit. I'll open up some crackers for you to try this. And I'll pour your tea for you when you want it, just to make it easy for you. And if you'd like to try a little dandelion wine, you're certainly welcome to. So why don't you just look around at the plants, talk with each other, glance at the books, and then some of you just come on and get started and try a little something. Oh, thank you.